President Barack Obama's proposed health care overhaul is really stealth reparations, a form of racial payback.
Man,
This is what this.
yeah, okay. Well,
Right.
I'm at a loss for words. I mean, what's his foundation for making this statement? I mean, that's, you know,
Right.
and I'm sure that he's trying to get readers. And I've seen him on, I think, CNN
Right.
a couple of times, and he wants to get called back to CNN. I'm sure that's a healthy stipend that he gets. So I hear you. I mean, okay. Now, if I'm going to give that some energy, I don't think so.
Right.
No, I don't think you can give me reparations. What I want is retribution.
Right.
The only form of reparations, and I think you mentioned that, and we may discuss it later, would be in the forum of education, but we're not there. But, I mean, you know, some people make their money on taking opposite views of things, and to see a so-called black man take views like this gives him more readers and more airtime. And
Yes,
so he's almost put in a position where he has to be oppositional.
Right.
And I respect that. I don't not necessarily respect his opinions, but
Right.
he's trying to make a living. So be it. Now, do I buy this? No.
Right.
Now I'll buy it when I get that check in the mail for reparations. You know what I'm saying?
That ain't coming, brother. I almost guarantee that. I'm not even gonna say almost. I guarantee that. I don't care how many Negroes we elect president. That one ain't coming. Now the last piece I want to deal with, and of course I want to deal with this because I know you're a proponent of true education. And I talked about this earlier, how in Chicago we had a educational conference called the New Educational Paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, I know you're really big on education. In your view, from your knowledge, what do you think are the main problems with the public schools?
Government schools. I call them what they are. They're government schools. I'm trying to frame this right because often when we do a training, my guide, brother by the name of Dr. Clifford Black, we were just in Chicago 2 weeks ago doing a training called the Red Pill Training. And it dealt with some forms about race and the genesis of race. And we deconstructed race and then we reconstructed it from a truth foundation. But his major emphasis is on educating people. First thing is the public or the government educational system has not failed. It has worked magnificently at dumbing people down. And that was his goal in the first place. Absolutely. You see, I think in order to understand something, you have to go to its source. So what I ask people is tell me the history of the public educational system in the United States.
Right.
What was its model? Where did it come from? What was the first city and state that it started? Most people think it is a national law, and it's not. It's a state law.
Right.
It's not a national law. But you know, I think you'd have to look at Horace Mann and Samuel Gompers to figure out the Prussian model of public education. And what was happening was back in the late 1800s, we were moving into an industrialized era. Now you got people that were earning their livings off the land and fishing and farming and tradesmen. So now you got to convince their children that that's not a job. Because they were building factories in Prussia.
Right.
So they created a government education system to take those children under the guise of educating them to get them used to being bored. Don't take my word for it. You can research it. It's right there in front of you. Yeah, they would learn how to read and write, but they also had to get them used to putting objects together repetitively over long periods of time. Well, it's hard to do that to people who know how to take care of themselves.
Right.
So you have to now insert a stopgap measure to abate that behavior and that way of living to begin to transition somebody or people to another way of living. Well, America now is becoming an industrial power at that time. So they brought the model back. Boston, Massachusetts, I think you'll find, is where it starts. It works in Boston. It begins to spread out through the country.
Right.
What I think is odd is most people I talk to think that public education has been around a long time, and it hasn't. Most people I talk to think that so-called white people of old, let's say in the 1800s, could read. They couldn't. That's a recent thing.
Right.
So I think the educational system is doing what it wants to do, but it's not up to the government educational system to educate my child.
Right.
That's my responsibility. We took our child out of school 4 years ago. We completely took him out of school, and my grandson. And we showed them how to educate themselves.
Right.
Well, my son just got scholarship to a prestigious college, full. He ain't got to pay a dime, okay?
Yes, sir.
So he's equipped and armed with the facts on how to teach himself. Why would I send my child to my enemy to be educated and expect that they would educate him to compete? Something's wrong with that picture. Most people, Brother Herman, don't even know how the curriculum gets set up for the. They think it's the Board of Education in the local municipality. It's not. It's the state. Here's something that most people really have never given thought to, and it's an exercise, a quick exercise, if you allow me.
Go ahead. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
If you look back historically, when the public education first came on the scene, rather, I think they would go like to 6th or 8th grade, and it was based on a model of an agrarian culture.
Right.
And I think after World War II, it went from like 8th grade to 12th grade. Well, you got to ask yourself now, why was that so? And I think if you really look, you'll find that as more jobs became available, industrialized jobs, factory jobs, and we also had to apply the population explosion that was happening. So they had to create some form of holding facilities for children. At least they would be competing with jobs with their parents. See, it goes from 6th grade, then it goes to an 8th grade, then it goes to a 12th grade. Well, if you think about this, here's how I can do it. If you educated every child to the capacity, to their fullest capacity, let me ask you this, Brother Herman, where would they work if you turned them loose on the streets? Where would they? It's nowhere for them to work.
Right.
So you have to create some place to hold them. So now we have extended adolescence, which is a false construct. There's no such thing as adolescence. We've taken it from puberty to 17 to 21 to about 28 or 29 now, because there are not enough jobs to support them. Well, we live in a construct called, I think, civilization. And the base model of civilization is the many supporting the few. If you look at it mathematically, just mathematically, if you drew a pyramid right here and you had the 5% of the controllers up here and the stratas would come down with your majority of your people in this much broader base, how are all of these people going to rise to the top? But that's what they tell you in school.
Right.
When they don't even teach you how to read.
Right.
Now they'll tell you, well, I believe you can fly, young man. This is what they do in school. But you haven't taught this child how to read. How do I know that?
Right.
My brother, I got 2 relatives that were on the dean's list for 4, not on the principal's list rather, for 4 years, but they only made 18 on the ACT. Well, how are you going to compete? How are you going to go to a real school?
Right.
So my take on it is, I think it is a parent's responsibility to ensure the education of their children. I'm not going to depend on the government to do that. If you do, you get what you ask for.
Absolutely. Now, in dealing with in a new educational paradigm, because we know what the schools are doing to our children, it's evident by what is produced. What is it that we need in order to establish a new educational paradigm?
That's quite simple. Parents are going to have to learn themselves. You see, if I don't know what's missing in my education, by the way, education I think goes to scholare, which means leisure. People that were educated had the leisure to be educated, truly educated. I think we have to establish first a true and effective reading process. I don't mean calling words. That's not hard. You do that by rote.
Right.
Here's the question I ask. Why is it in Hebrew school or in private schools, I mean real private schools, that they teach the alphabet? A means ox, B means house, C means boomerang. And in public school, they say A means apple, B means ball. Now, you may say, well, what the hell is that talking about? the characters of the English alphabet have a genesis